welcome to a special edition of the Game Informer Show. I'm your host, Ben Hansen, joined by Andrew Reiner.
Hello.
Matt Miller.
Here I am.
Dan Tack.
Hello.
And Leo Vader in the booth.
Hello.
If you're watching the video version, he's in the booth far away because he's actually in the Oasis, which is the topic of today's podcast. And I know there are people out there that say, this is a gaming podcast. Don't talk about a movie. I don't care how much you love Spielberg. Don't talk about it. But Ready Player One is out this week. It is absolutely worth talking about it, not only because we're a bunch of big old nerds at this table, but this is one of the, I would argue this is the dorkiest and specifically gamey dorkiest film ever made.
Oh, easily. By a wide margin, I think.
Oh my God. So we all saw it just last night. Miller, much to his chagrin, I've ran over and just grabbed his mouth and kept it shut so that he could not just unload all of his fantastic dorky knowledge about this book and this movie all over us and not save it for the podcast. But now we're here. Let's talk about Ready Player One, you guys. Reiner, what did you think of this film?
It's why I love going to the movies.
Wow, okay.
Like, it hit all the right notes for me. It was a visual bombardment of just spectacle, like big action set pieces, but then also like more cameos than you could ever see in one show. Like, I probably missed 90% of them.
Yeah.
There'd be a group of like 60 people and I'd focus in on like RoboCop.
I don't think he's exaggerating, by the way. Like, I
Yeah,
know that sounds
seriously.
like an exaggeration, but I would agree. There's it would take many viewings, and on those viewings pausing every 10 to 15 seconds to get all the
absurd.
references.
Like, if you like that aspect of Wreck-It Ralph, this makes Wreck-It Ralph look like a joke.
Or,
it's absurd.
Cabin in the Woods, that shot where
yeah.
it pulls
Yes.
back and you see all the creatures.
Yeah.
That's like most of this film.
most of this movie,
Yeah.
like, it's not just that it's like one way of doing that. It's not that it's just like in the script. It's in the visuals. It's in the things they talk about. It's in
my God, yes.
things that are in the background of a scene.
And by the way, we should point out that this is going to be spoiler-free discussion.
Yeah,
yes. And then back half of the show, we're going to dive into spoilers. So don't be worried about spoilers in this section here.
And the other thing, just to kind of finish my early thoughts on it, as a fan of the book, it really surprised me too. Like, they changed a lot of it. And after I saw the film, I didn't know that Ernest Cline also co-wrote this with Zach Penn. So I was like, oh, so he basically got the chance to write the same story twice.
Yeah.
Kind of like George Lucas with Star Wars, if you've ever read the early draft of that Dark Horse released.
Yeah.
It was a completely different thing.
I definitely want to dive in deep because I haven't read the book. And Dan, you read the book. You're a big fan of that one,
absolutely
right?
have. Yeah, I was a huge fan of the book when it came out. They changed a significant amount in the movie, but you know what? Here's the cool thing. I think it all worked out really well.
Oh, good.
Like, the things that they changed, they wouldn't have been as impressive, I don't think, on film, and they instead went with big set piece moments instead of some of that other stuff that was in the book. And they also changed some of the characters around a little bit. But that gets into spoiler territory, I think.
Which we'll definitely get into. Leo Vader, the youngest in the crew. Leo was reacting strongly throughout that entire film. He's sitting right next to me, and I have no read on if he hated this or if it's his favorite movie of all time. Leo, what did you think in the booth there?
It was by far the best graphics card benchmarking software I've ever seen.
See, that's weird to me that I guess it actually makes sense that the young guy didn't like it as much as the rest of us old timers.
Typical.
Well, what did you think specifically? Forget your jokes, Leo. Come on, put on your film critic hat. What did you think of this thing?
I didn't like it. I didn't like the film.
Wow.
Really? Okay, what didn't you like about it?
I didn't like where the story went or really how it was told. It all felt very predictable, yet at the same time nonsensical. And the cameos didn't really do anything for me. They kind of had to call them out. You know, they couldn't let them land. They had to like say verbally, based on the best-selling book.
Oh, well, hang on. We'll get into that. I think there's a lot of stuff
I'm
that's
gonna get
like, that's
somebody hold me back.
quietly slipped.
To be fair to Leo, though, there's ones that are references that he's just, there's no way he would see.
Yes.
Unless you've been like a student of 80s culture.
My issue
forever.
wasn't there were too few references I got.
Yeah.
You know, screw all the references. It's still like it's a well-constructed Spielbergian film, right?
I thought so, yeah.
It's totally an old, like, Spielberg has in recent years really gone into that space of like doing these sort of like sober, Oscar-tailored
History
movies.
pieces.
And I'm not faulting these. I mean, he's made some amazing films, but this is much more the kind of movie that he made back in the period that this movie references.
Which is the most amazing thing to me, because this is sort of him doing getting his chance to do a movie that was inspired by him.
Yes.
It's like the snake eating itself kind
There's
of craziness.
we were talking about before the movie how it's weird in a way, in a strange way, that this is kind of like a postmodern movie about the creator of this postmodern movie is referencing his own work almost.
But at the same time, kind of sort of stuff he produced, and kind of sort of, if you want to
Right.
debate that later on, we can for like cameos. But in theory, he stripped out a lot of the
he
Spielberg
stays
from that
away
book.
from
He did
most
stay
of the
away from his own
Spielberg stuff.
except for the stuff he had to put in there, because
Right.
otherwise it wouldn't have worked.
Well,
Felt
yeah.
weird, right? It's just a sort of balls to the wall fun movie from beginning to end.
yeah.
It's one that I never like the term of like when people say like leave your brain at the door, and I don't think this is what that is, but it is a movie that demands you leave your suspension of disbelief kind of.
Oh God, we'll get into that. Yeah, for
you
sure.
have to be willing to suspend your disbelief, I guess would be the better way to say that, and accept that there's a lot of stuff that is convenient and just weird about the way that the plot is going to unfold, and there's a lot of exposition, especially in the first 30 minutes of the movie. It's like a exposition hammer.
VO fest, and then
Yeah.
it also picks up more of the plot in the real world than I
Yes.
expected. It's like, oh, we're really spending a lot of time
Yeah.
here. I thought it was all going to be just fantastical nonsense.
But with all that said, throughout that time that you're getting the exposition, you're getting such a visual feast of just fun stuff to look at. Not just the references, not just the nostalgia stuff, although that is plentiful, but also just creating some really compelling things to look at, right? Like to put it another way, you could mute it and watch the movie, and it would be like a really visually fantastic thing to just watch unfold in front of you.
yeah,
So in terms of exposition and everything, I agree that it's a little heavy-handed, but I also think that it has to be. Like, when I heard that the book was being adapted to a movie, I'm like, you can't do that.
You can't do
Right?
that.
This is never going to work.
Yeah.
But they did make it work, and yeah, it's a little heavy-handed at times, but you got to figure not everyone knows, what this movie's about going into it, and you kind of really need explanation
Yeah.
to even grasp what the hell is going on. So, I mean, I thought it worked.
As a gamer going into that, like I was surprised how deep the cuts were.
Oh my
I don't wanna,
God,
I don't
yes.
want to spoil stuff,
will.
but like,
We will later.
but I mean, it really like goes back in time and gets very intensive on what they're talking about and giving you specific details.
This movie was made for this Game Informer staff. I feel like this
It
crew,
really
maybe in particular,
seems like
outside
it,
of
yeah.
Leo, who's too
Except
logical,
Leo.
has got a heart of gold. But there were even times where I'm like, I'm tapping out, I'm dorked out. Like, you guys gotta stop. You gotta stop. And that was the biggest battle. You talk about like, movies about leaving your brain at the door. I feel like this is a movie you have to leave cynicism at the door.
Yeah.
Like, because I even caught myself, maybe even out loud a couple times. I was sitting next to Miller, hopefully not too loudly, just like,
Come on. I heard you say come on several times.
But then I had to catch myself like, dude, you know what you signed
Yeah.
up for. Just
Yeah.
embrace it for fun. This is not a time to be too cool for school. Like, just embrace the dorkiness.
Listen, if a cynical curmudgeon like myself can enjoy this film, and which I absolutely did, I think anybody can. Like, it reminds me of like, it's not a one-to-one thing, but like this feels like a Goonies style experience with a gaming angle, obviously.
Gaming
It's got
angle, but
the-
the angle's like 270 degrees.
Right.
Yes.
It's all
But
gaming.
I see
but-
your reference is spot on, though. I mean, like it has that frantic pacing that is really not concerned with logic so much as it is just like, how are we going to get to the next thing that's just fun? Like, you know
Right.
what? Now the kids in Goonies are going to go down a water slide that's in the middle.
Yes.
Like if you look at that scene from
Oh, I
Goonies,
want to talk about the water slide in this movie. Hold on.
if you look at those moments too closely, it's like, well, that doesn't make any sense.
Right.
Right.
But is it fun to have the water slide scene in the Goonies? Of course it is.
Okay, should we get specific here? Should we break it off and go for
Yeah.
spoilers?
Let's take the chains
well,
off.
one
man.
thing I
Yeah.
do want to say is that I didn't expect from this film is how it kind of explored a relationship in virtual reality.
Yeah.
And I think they handled that very well. I think Spielberg and the writers did a great job of outlining the dangers, the fascination of it,
Yep.
and then projecting that onto what actually happens in reality. I thought that was done very well. And
Yeah.
that's something that every gamer's gone through, right? Like, hey, I'm really getting to know this guy really well or this gal, and then where does it go from there?
Right.
Right.
And part of this discussion, maybe this will tease a little bit where I would like to move the discussion when we start talking about spoilers. But I also think in the midst of this spectacle that is this crazy blockbuster Spielberg film, there's also some stuff that are some pretty compelling themes that this movie does attempt to explore. around any number of ideas. Most significantly, though, exploring the ideas of like the authorship of our own stories, right? And how we shape our own narratives. There's a lot of that is explored in this movie. And there's a lot of interesting things it's trying to say about escapism, right? That is more maybe more nuanced than I think many movies try to do, because it's not trying to take every aspect of escapism to task as like, oh, it's terrible, you should always be living in the real world and never try to get away to anything else. But it's also not going completely the other way either.
Right.
And it does that in interesting ways.
Definitely.
Agreed.
All right, it's time to get into specifics here. Let's really dive in deep. Spoilers, spoilers, spoilers. If you have not seen Ready Player One,
We're gonna
please
spoil it.
don't watch or listen to this.
You're gonna ruin it.
Honestly, this is one of those things where it's like, oh, I just kind of want to listen to it. Maybe I'll see the film.
Yeah.
Like, the surprises are almost everything in this movie. Like, please do not watch or listen to this unless you've seen the film and are ready to dive in deep, because that was the most fun, is just not knowing what to expect, and even watching all those trailers, dissecting all those trailers along the way.
There's certain things they've held back.
It's so smart that they've held certain things back.
Yeah.
Not the final battle, more interesting stuff, which we can get into.
Right.
Okay, the book specifically. I'd love to learn about differences from the book. Like, what are the biggest deviations?
Man. Okay,
you guys...
so unless I'm mistaken, it has been a while since I read the book. There was no like the race thing, wasn't there? Was like a joust contest instead.
D&D.
The
and
D&D
D&D
thing
for the second
is
kid
a major
instead of-
departure.
Yeah.
I think in a lot of ways you could think about this being the same framework of a story. It's still saying the same things with mostly the same core characters, but almost everything that is the individual scenes and moments is different.
Everything. So,
It's,
I mean,
it's
even
way
like
more than you would think.
the Atari
a
stuff
lot.
at the end, is that in the book? With adventure?
The adventure thing is still in the book, yeah, as I recall.
I'm trying to remember.
I'm pretty sure
Yeah,
it's
the
still.
first
I'm
Easter
pretty
egg.
sure that it's
Yeah.
still
Yeah.
was adventure, yeah.
But a lot of it is very different.
Wow. Okay. I
Like,
just
there's still-
assumed
there's
that
still
Chase
the
was in
fortress.
there.
There's still like the barrier. There's
Oh.
still that big battle. It's not Gundam though. It's Ultraman.
Oh.
And there's other
interesting.
big robots that also show up.
Right. It's that part was
yeah.
mostly
I think
the same.
Voltron shows up.
Well, they just mentioned. I think it's just like a sentence
the book,
with
by the way.
a comma.
Yeah.
It's like, and Voltron, comma,
Yeah.
and this guy, comma.
I mean, that's really what it
Giving
was.
readers no idea who they are if they don't know.
The book
Whatever.
over the years has following the book's progress, by the way, and I'm not going to dwell on this too much, but I
Yeah.
think it's relevant to what we're talking about with this movie, has been an interesting thing to watch, because there were I think most of us who read at this table read it pretty early,
Yeah.
and got excited about it because it was so weird,
Yeah.
and it was so rooted in this necessity of understanding the references that it was making, and like it didn't care about introducing you to, let's say, Voltron. It just threw that in there, and if you didn't know what Voltron was, well, the book was just going to kind of go on. And over the time since then, I think a lot of people have come to criticize the book for some of that stuff, and for stuff that people see as I don't know, maybe not being as descriptive, or as I don't know, explaining itself better. But for those of us who read it early on, I think that was kind of what was sort of charming about it.
I mean, it's not a. It's
he
not
assumed
a high,
his audience was the people that
Yeah.
grew up with this stuff, right?
Not some blockbuster audience, but I think originally it was a book written just like, you know what, this is the stuff I care about, and the people who might maybe read this book might also really get a kick out of just reading all this stuff smashed together.
And Spielberg was one of those people
Yes.
who really got a kick
yeah.
out of it. But
and
like
tried to bring it to a mass audience.
much like the arc of, people seems like turning on the book in a weird way and people just tearing it to shreds now. I wonder what the evolution of this movie is going to be. I think this movie is going to be a very easy movie to make fun of 5 years from now, 10 years from now. Like, it is going to age poorly, but that's not diminishing the fun and just the batshit insanity of this movie. This movie is the most batshit thing I've ever seen.
yeah.
There's a
best
lot.
thing you've ever seen. That's
It's
a bit
up there.
much.
It's really-
up
it's
there,
really
though.
out
For
there.
a
Insane.
blockbuster, it really
It's
is.
insane.
and
Which I think is
Spielberg,
great.
Yeah.
Like I can't believe. Like I was surprised at how much I enjoyed the movie, because I did not know that. I thought it was going to be extremely difficult to translate, even with Spielberg's deft hand.
Well, I think the smartest thing they did is they diverged completely from the 80s. That is one decade that's covered, but you also have Overwatch in there.
It's just total
You have
pop
stuff
culture now.
through all the decades, right?
I was very confused about this lore. So it is
Yeah.
through all decades, but they just focus on the 80s because Halliday loved the 80s.
The original book focuses specifically on the 80s, and the idea that in the 2040s that there's been this revival that is largely driven by this game creator, Halliday, who was so obsessed with the 80s that he created a world where all the stuff that he loved from the 80s was made manifest.
But
But
now
you
that
can
it's
make whatever
everything-
you want.
Right.
Right. But now that it's everything, doesn't that kind of fall apart? Like watching this movie, I'm like, what? This would be like if we were obsessed with the 40s and if there was no pop culture beyond the 40s.
No, they
like I don't know what the is
simply
going on.
added everything to the Oasis as like the rule, but they still put a focus on Halliday's memories and Halliday's life as the keys to cracking to getting to the end of the
Yeah,
game.
the rule is you could be whatever you want, create whatever you want, right? So if you're a fan of Overwatch today or from the 2010 era, you could make that, and that's what we see in that film.
Okay.
We see Tracer.
Why?
That's one
Why
of the
was
characters.
Columbus booming then? I didn't understand that idea. Like,
Because it's where he made the game.
so people just moved there and lived in.
It's they don't make they don't focus on that, but that is the explanation given in the book
It
or
also
in the movie anyway.
And they talk about society falling apart.
Yeah.
Very briefly, like
Right.
in a kind of clever way about one particular resource drying up.
Yeah.
But that is just kind of a telltale sign of like the world is in trouble.
Yeah,
people are escaping.
We get the reference of the corn syrup riots. I think
Yeah.
is the
Yeah,
term they
it's
describe,
funny,
which
yeah.
is really cool. I think something that was brought up here that I referenced in the earlier part of the conversation that I want to focus in on is that change from 80s culture to talking about the creation of anything that you can imagine is, I think, one of the most significant things about the film and what it's trying to talk about. I said before that I think one of the central themes here is one of authorship and of sort of how you tell your own story. And I think they really double down on that in the script and maybe Ernest Cline was part of that in the way that he rewrote this for film. But there is this overriding sense of all of the characters trying to find a way to tell their own story and to kind of both be authors of their own destiny and also how they like represent that story to the world around them. That's shown off through, most significantly in that final reveal about like the Adventure 2600 game, right?
Yeah.
The focus that they put on that and the idea of like finding that Easter egg where Robinette just wanted people to know who he was.
Who developed the game again? I forget. I wish the game told me or the film told me repeatedly.
Right. But I mean, like it's maybe a little heavy-handed at it, but
Yeah.
like that is
That's so
their
cool.
That's
It
the
was.
way.
It was
That's
super
insane.
cool. It was super cool.
That's the way that the movie drives home the point that they've been talking about throughout. It's about Halliday and how he told his story, right? How he
Yeah.
represented himself in the world, but who he really was inside and who he didn't really understand who he was. You've got basically the entire world at this point that is representing themselves through avatars and through things that aren't really who they are, and everybody sort of trying to find a way to present themselves in a particular way and give their stories meaning in a world that has largely gone to crap.
Right.
And where nobody really has an individual story anymore.
Especially the aunt.
Especially the aunt.
That was such a
poor
bummer
lady.
being a huge Spielberg fan of like, okay, Spielberg family drama, let's go,
Yeah,
baby.
right.
This is peak Spielberg, and this is like, oh, I hate this. This feels completely untrue. I'm not buying this, and it's gone. Okay,
Yeah.
so long.
They get through that
I
pretty
mean,
quick.
that is what happens.
It just
like-
if there just would have been one nice scene, like get the weird her like boyfriend or whatever out of the picture. Like, what did he add? Some drama about the gloves? Just like have one nice scene between the aunt and the kid. That's enough. But instead, it's just
Wade
this bleh.
Wade calling the guy a noob was probably the highlight of the
Oh
film.
yeah, you're right. There's a lot of those
you
moments.
really like
where
that, Leo?
That was pretty important.
I could
Hey,
feel
yeah,
Leo
actually,
cringing.
Did you really identify with the uncle? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, sometimes I feel like a noob.
now that we're in spoiler territory,
Yeah.
Leo, is there anything that you did like about the movie at all? I want to get that on the table first. Like,
I tried to think of things, and
Hold on. What about Ben Mendelsohn as a villain?
I thought he worked.
Phil
Ben
Spencer did a
Mendelsohn,
really
the,
good
the
job.
villain from movies.
Leo, you cynical
Dude,
dick.
what
I said leave it at the door, man.
He was
Ben Mendelsohn is
fantastic.
great. He was
I-
really good in Animal Kingdom, and now he's typecast, and nobody gets credit for casting him as a villain anymore.
I was definitely a little concerned about it, like originally, like when the movie started. But yeah, he grew on me as the corporate bad guy.
He was great.
What was his avatar? Like once they said that
Yeah, that
Clark
was
corporate
weird.
bad guy.
No, but
Corporate
once
bad
they
guy.
said that Clark Kent detail, I'm like, oh, he's disguising himself because that kind of looks like a beefy Clark Kent. It also looks exactly like Senator Armstrong from Metal Gear Rising.
It looks similar.
Which is very confusing.
And I think maybe they were maybe that was going for that.
I
It's
honestly
possible.
expected him to transform into Superman at the end because didn't he look like a beefy
an
Clark
evil
Kent?
Superman?
Yeah, he could have been.
Yeah.
Or Black Adam or something.
Yeah.
They also, you had IROC as the other sort of antagonist character, which I thought
Amazing.
I thought it was really great, and
He was
that's
hilarious.
a much bigger role than he was in the book. I
Yeah.
don't know if he ever got that hands-on with everybody
Right.
in the book.
But he is like a bounty hunter in the book.
He's just a griefer, right? And I thought they personified him really well with that character. I wish we would have gotten to see his in real life avatar though at some point. We never got to see him.
Deleted
No, we
scenes.
don't.
but-
It would have been that World of Warcraft guy in the
Blu-ray.
basement, right? But we never got to see him. We never got to see him.
Tell me, I cheated a little bit, and I asked Reiner this morning to tell me his favorite like reference.
Yeah.
Did you have a favorite?
Great question. I was going to ask this as well. You know what it is? I mean, there is one that is the best, but like in terms of like deep cuts I didn't expect, but I probably should have. It was seeing a Last Action Hero reference to this like Jack Slater. On a,
I didn't even see
movie.
that.
Is in the background of one of the shots. But Zach Penn, the screenwriter, he also wrote Last Action Hero. So I was like,
that's
that
pretty
kind of
funny.
makes sense.
There's so much stuff like just hidden. Like I saw books in Wade's room.
Yeah.
Like I think there was like a reference to Schindler's List, no joke, in that room.
What? Shut up.
I think there was a Schindler's Ark book, which was the basis for the movie, in Wade's room. I'm not
Oh
even. I'm
my
not kidding.
God, Spielberg.
And I don't know for sure. I thought I saw that.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
because I was looking, like you're looking all the time.
You're constantly looking
to a distracting degree, yeah.
I liked the crawl showing up.
Explain
the
what a
blade.
crawl is.
Okay, so there's a movie called Crawl that's about this like bladed glaive
Oh,
thing.
that's why you laughed at that.
Yeah.
Okay, I didn't know.
It's
Miller and I
like-
were like losing
We
it.
were totally losing at that
Oh,
because we both
God.
love Crawl for
Yeah.
all its insanity. And in that movie, there's a dude who, you know, his like thing that he's got, like the big weapon he's got to get is this glaive that's this spinning boomerang blade thing that
Okay.
he flings out and it comes back to him.
Yeah.
And so there's one point, like a pivotal moment where they're going up against one of the bad guys, where one of the heroes goes into his inventory and pulls out the glaive from Crawl and like flings it out.
And then seconds later, they use a mad ball too.
Yeah.
And I was like, this is the best.
What's
the
a
Mad
Mad
Ball
Ball?
was crazy to see. I was
Yeah,
like, I haven't
that's
seen
the
one of those
real
in
deep
40.
cut,
You know,
right?
What
yeah.
is it?
That
It's
was
a little
it was like a little
spongy
toy that you'd squeeze and the eyes would
just
pop
a head.
out.
It was supposed
Okay.
to be like all gross and monstery and stuff.
Oh, God.
Like parents hated it because they were gross.
Okay,
It sat alongside Garbage Pail Kids.
I know that.
Exactly right.
Okay,
As
so
like a gross out like collecting thing.
I was barely alive in the 80s. So the other thing right before that that's more gamer focused is they had the Lancer from Gears of War.
Yeah.
That he's firing with. And it also played like hinted at the Gears of War theme. Did you catch that, Miller?
The
like
music
in the
in this
soundtrack?
film was incredible, by the way.
Constant
The way it would
musical
shift,
references.
it was so
yeah.
good.
Like when they use the Zemeckis cube and it blows up and they have like the little Back
Oh,
to the
man.
Future
Of
like
course.
hints in
Yes.
there for like what an honor for Zemeckis to get like the fucking cube named after him.
I mean, in a lot of ways, the movie plays like the way you would play with toys when you were 7, right? Like the idea that you're like, okay, I got this guy from Toy Story, and I got this Transformer, and I've got this Star Wars figure, and I've got my sister's My Little Pony over here, and they're all like, they're in a fight. They're all gonna like,
Yes.
like,
but when you're
they're
Spielberg
all
and
gonna-
no one says no,
Yes.
then that movie just happens.
and then that movie happens, and there's lots of scenes in this movie that are just like different variations of that toy battle.
Yes.
There's a race. There's
That race was so fun.
It was great.
there's a dance like a mid-air dance scene.
That nightclub was awesome.
Like, just
really
crazy.
awesome.
Design wise,
Yes.
yeah, through the roof.
Very
I
Mass
think in
Effect.
one sequence, I saw like one shot. I saw it began with like a Geonosian bug from Attack of the Clones, and then I saw like 3 Hello Kitty characters, and then I saw Freddy Krueger. And I was just like, this is bonkers. And those were just like 3 of like 150 characters on screen.
It's constant, but at the same point, I do want to make the statement like you don't have to be sitting there.
No, but that's part of the
dissecting
fun.
it. It is. It's super part of the fun. But like a lot of people, I think who have trepidation about seeing the movie are like going to be like, "Oh man, well I didn't grow up in the '80s, or I don't get any of these references." It's
You'll
still a
get
fun
a
movie.
lot of them.
And speaking of references, I think the best one in the entire movie. I mean, it's more of an overarching thing than a character, but it's definitely the Shining sequence.
Oh my
right?
God!
Like that-
this is what I'm excited to talk
Like
about.
the Shining is the best sequence in that entire
The-
movie.
Absolutely.
And
We
it's
were-
the best. It's
we
the
were
best
dying of laughter,
surprise,
yeah.
right? It's the best surprise of the movie, and the way that they handle it and find a way to make it comedic by taking one of the sort of side characters who hasn't seen The Shining,
Yes.
Right.
and then having him like experience the moments of The Shining firsthand.
Oh, I'm so happy they didn't
good.
spoil any of this nonsense. But even like the theater, where it's like Shining, like in a modern movie theater, I don't know what percentage of the audience has seen it, but like the theater lost its fucking mind during that Shining stuff.
Hey,
It was
Leo.
so much fun.
Leo, have you seen The Shining?
Yes, I love it.
Okay, because Leo, you were reacting very strongly when that Shining started. And I'm like, I don't know if he hates this or he just is scared of it or what your reaction was there.
I mean, if you've seen The Shining, how can you didn't get any like titillating fun out of that? Like,
You guys want to
moment?
hear a 100% true note I have here?
yes.
I didn't truly hate this movie until the Shining sequence.
It's the best scene in the movie.
Okay, to be fair to Leo, the idea of recreating like scenes from The Shining, incredible. Where I had that little cynic within me bubble up is like turning the elevator of blood into like a whoa, like slippy slide action scene is like, holy shit, you
Hobbit
guys.
That's
river
brilliant.
rafting.
It's brilliant.
It's brilliant. It really is.
Leo, is that the kind of stuff that rubbed you the wrong way?
Yeah. I'm normally not like a stickler about reboots or whatever. You know, the original's still going to live on and be fine no matter what people do with it nowadays. But to take like a true classic piece of art by a dead filmmaker and do a YouTube spoof of it truly made me sad.
It's so weird to think of like,
Dude, we're not pissing on the Mona Lisa here, man. This is,
well, damn close to it for
It's
some.
about as close as you can get into filmmaking.
my
I,
God.
I just
He's
don't
right.
see it that way. I
don't
I
either.
see that kind of stuff as being a tribute to how
It
great
is.
that movie was,
It absolutely
And Spielberg,
and finding
yeah.
a way to put it through the lens of this new comedic moment.
It's
but
like a 15-minute sequence.
Yeah,
it's
I
crazy.
see. I see both.
amazing.
Both takes on that. Like, he's gone. You know, like, yeah.
What's
it's
what would
Kubrick's
Stanley
gone.
Kubrick say?
it doesn't matter what he would say. The work is out there.
yeah.
He made look.
That's true.
I mean, it is like
Kill
I
him
said.
again.
I know it. I know it's a sort of highfalutin word to bring out here, but this is ultimately like the book was. It's a piece of postmodern like fiction,
I'm glad you
right?
said fiction instead of art. Yes, absolutely.
And so that's what that stuff does. Is it takes existing. It does the same thing that like Braid did with Super Mario, right? It uses existing cultural understandings to say something new, right?
Yeah.
And
And what it had to say that was new was the spooky bathroom
I
zombie
mean,
lady.
you-
Like
dude,
the idea of like the action scene with her with a knife. And to be fair, this was my favorite part of the movie. I thought it was absolutely amazing. But there were those moments of like, what the hell are you doing? Where it's like the crazy scene that scared me more than any other in The Shining when I
It's a
first
scary
watched it, of
scene.
like the skin melting lady in the
Yeah.
bathroom,
Yeah.
turning her into like this action serial killer with the
Yeah.
knife and then the axe at the end and the hedgerow. It's like, what the hell?
It worked, man. Because you got to think. Okay,
man.
Think about this. Like, as crazy and weird as this thing is with all the VR and stuff like that,
Yeah.
it's not inconceivable that our future goes this way, at all.
You're totally right.
You're right.
Yeah.
That tech is confusing and troublesome, but it's just crazy that in this movie that is all about being a big old nerd, especially for games, that the best reference or best Easter egg, it's beyond an Easter egg.
biggest Easter egg.
Is The Shining. I
mean,
I
yeah.
never saw it coming.
I think your point, Dan, is important here, right? Which is that like I think the movie does a really good job of walking this line between acknowledging the fun of all this stuff and not necessarily like coming down on it in a way that would feel preachy or like annoying, especially to those of us who care a lot about pop culture stuff. But at the same time, it is ultimately sort of it's a dystopian story, right?
It absolutely
is a
is.
story about like how escapism can go too far, right? Where at some point things have gone off the rails and this is all people care about.
I hope
right?
nobody ever disrespects The Shining like this. Wow. Scary future.
like
That's right. None of your favorite works of art will be safe when we could go in and change anything. So
The
be
Exactly.
careful,
Shining,
Leo.
the book by Stephen King, adapted into a movie by Stanley Kubrick.
Best-selling book.
This part wasn't in The Shining.
I think there's a lot of stuff in the movie that does a good job of bringing out these fun moments and these fun scenes that we all have happy memories about, but also sort of constantly bringing us back to this real world where things are really kind of like screwed up. and
Yeah.
and that the movie chooses to deal with that. I think it would be a lot easier for the movie to kind of be just like, it's just crazy, like everybody loves the Oasis and it's the greatest thing ever. Or on the other end, coming out at the I was worried that at the end of this movie it was going to come out and be like, oh, virtual reality and games and having fun, that's all terrible. Like, we all need to constantly be like in the thick of reality.
And it seemed to be veering in that way a little bit.
It did, and then
it
it pulls back by the end and walks a middle path, which I really appreciate.
For sure.
Loved it.
It's pretty wild. The real world connection. That was kind of a bummer moment, is like when H first brought up, like, you don't even know what this person looks like in the real world. It's like a little homophobic when it's like, it could be a dude. But it actually ended up paying off for having that twist of him being a her and all that stuff. But then I was still bummed out when I saw Artemis for the first time. It's like, okay, this is a smoking hot chick who happens to have like a birthmark. Like, have some nerve and like make it an unattractive person, or make it like a morbidly obese person that you then learn to love. Like, that's a cool move, not smoking hot chick with a thing on her eye.
8% of her face stained.
Yeah, that's like, who the hell cares? That's not a message. Okay, other references. I lost my mind. I have a whole list of crap that I vaguely remember, but I think it's fun focusing on the gaming stuff. Specifically, the idea that there is like a back and forth exchange in a Spielberg movie about gameplay modes within GoldenEye, and they reference slappers only. Like, what the
That was weird.
A deep cut.
That was super deep
That's
cut.
the main GoldenEye reference.
That was a super
give him
deep cut.
too much credit.
It was a weird scene. Like, if anything, I do take issue with in the film. Like, it wasn't perfect. Like, so definitely some of the dialogue was a little hammy, even for this movie. Like,
not practicing my Mario Kart up here.
This movie moved fast. Though.
It
did.
really fast.
It had a lot of ground to cover, and for them to take a moment like that to focus on an N64 game, I thought was really cool, and it spoke specifically to gamers in the crowd.
Absolutely.
But the last act, they were just going through. It was like a replay episode of Atari 2600 games.
which was
really
awesome.
absurd.
I was just losing my mind where they kept calling out names.
Yeah.
And you saw like a dry erase board, like all the Atari
They're
games.
literally
on it.
like throwing around the Atari cartridges.
Yeah, it was awesome.
Since we
That
can
was
play
good.
the gamer card more than most here, like, did anything, like Tack mentioned with the dialogue, did anything bump you guys as like cool it, or they didn't quite stick the landing on the gamer front?
The stuff that is, there's plenty of groan-worthy stuff. I don't mean to imply that it's like, oh yeah, they totally got it. Like, that's not it. It's that like the stuff that is groan-worthy for me, it's just more of the fun, right? It's more like,
so
for
lines
instance,
like "fanboys know a hater."
like stuff like that is just so like silly and over the top. Or like there's
I don't think they treat it that way though.
I don't care. I mean, like,
Right. That's the right
I
approach.
think that,
Or
like,
it's generalized for everyone to
Right.
understand, where you're just, as a gamer, you're like, you don't say it that way.
yeah, you don't say it that
Right.
way. There's one point that just to like get it in there, they reference Twitch.
Yeah, they're watching
I
that
saw
Twitch
her-
stream.
I saw our Twitch stream.
Yeah, like I watch all her Twitch streams, and I'm just like,
Yeah, that was pretty
it's
fun.
so dumb.
Why would there
It's
be
like,
Twitch
it's so
streams in a
dumb.
world where there's only one game and everyone owns
it's
it?
totally dumb, and yet I was just kind of on board. I was like, you know what, that's fine.
You know where it bumped me was it's like they should have just called this movie Ready Player One: Return of the Battletoads, because Battletoads were
There's a lot of
everywhere.
Battletoads.
I only saw them once.
Oh,
I
they
saw-
were all
I
over
only
the
saw them
place.
once, but I saw
I saw
Tracer
Tracer
three different
three times.
Tracer
Yes.
shows up a
From
lot.
Overwatch,
She's.
yeah.
I think the reason we
Three
all
times
saw
on her.
Tracer is because she's really like visible. She's
Yeah.
really
Yeah.
bright and like stands out.
Also, Jim Raynor gets like full frontal there. There's a lot.
There's a lot of
shot.
Jim Raynor. There's a lot of there's a lot of Master Chief and the Spartans.
Tons of Master
Microsoft
Uh,
making that deal.
there's-
Minecraft in the very beginning.
There's a big Minecraft moment.
He does a Hadouken.
He does a Hadouken, like just out of nowhere, like without referencing Street Chief specifically.
Right.
He just does a Hadouken.
Speaking
But
in
to be
one of
fair,
his
like
fights.
as I was building
Blanca,
up, I was
Blanca
like,
and Chun-Li are dancing in the club.
oh, that's right.
Yeah.
That's so cute.
I
was
saw Ryu, by the way.
I was so
there you go.
excited
Yeah,
for like
yeah, I saw.
they're gonna do the Kamehameha. Holy S, they're doing a Kamehameha. And it's like Hadouken, the wannabe Kamehameha. Okay, I guess that's
Close
the
enough.
situation. Yeah.
But again, I think you can go through that movie with a fine-tooth comb and find so much stuff that we missed, because a lot of it, especially a lot of those references, are just packed into the last battle scene. where
Sonic
you got
doing the
hundreds
spin
of
dash
guys,
in the
like,
last battle.
I didn't
scene.
see that.
You're gonna
Yeah.
be like, pause. Oh, there's that guy. Pause.
Yeah.
Oh, there's that one.
Yeah, it's done so well.
It's
It really
absurd.
is.
And even
Actually, yeah, the absurdity of that final battle, the whole like Mecha Godzilla thing.
It is
I had
totally absurd.
No idea how that was going to translate to film, and you know
Yeah.
what? They nailed it.
the fact that they had a Gundam jump out of Serenity Jesus Christ. Okay, on that front of just weird combos, one of the things, I think the part that got me where I said, oh no, or Jesus Christ, or whatever, sitting next to Miller was when the Iron Giant did the Terminator 2 death. I was
As
like,
he's going to the lava.
it's like, this is where I've hit my limit. Like, I'm as dorky as can be. I love both those things, and for some reason, seeing them together should be a delight. But it's like, come on, it was a little too much.
I don't know. I mean, it for me, if there was going to be a point of that, it would have happened so early in the movie. Sure. Because
was it when the alien chestburster popped out of Goro?
Yeah, that was. It's stuff like that, right? Like, I mean, they broadcast what this movie's going to be. That opening fly through when you first go into the Oasis, should really make it clear what you're in for, right?
Yes.
Because you're going through all these different kind of created worlds and so rapidly moving past any one and on to the next that it's almost it almost in aggregate becomes, yes, you're understanding some of the references at any one moment, but as a film watching experience, it's ultimately saying something about pop culture, right? It's saying that like pop culture has hit a point that there is just so much of it that in some sense it has become kind of meaningless, right? Like that there's just all this stuff and you can't possibly digest it all or take meaning from all of it. Like any given shot of Ready Player One is sort of sending that message, right? And so you have all these different people who have different things that they love that they're trying to represent with their weapons and their characters and their avatars and their vehicles and at the end of the day, it's all kind of just like, it's kind of nonsense.
So you're saying it's working the opposite message more than we think of pop culture is ultimately meaningless. Forget all this popcorn crap.
I don't think it goes that far. I just think it's saying that like everybody is struggling to like have their own story and have something to identify with, and that in a world that is this like covered in pop culture, you grasp for the things that maybe would say something about yourself, right? Like we're Star Wars fans because it says something about us as people that we like Star Wars.
The big message is it's okay to be who you want to be, right? Whether that's you projecting yourself or if you want to be someone else, that's totally cool in the Oasis. I thought that was awesome. But the one thing is that was forbidden was revealing who you really are in the real world.
Right.
Like that's where you get in trouble.
Don't say your real name in any case. Speaking of real world, if I were to get into a fight in the Oasis, step one, don't buy a haptic suit. Like, how would you be hurt if you didn't buy the suit? He puts on this suit just so he can get kicked in the nuts. It's like, this is the dumbest crap.
But it's like, okay, I could have sex and it would be amazing.
Yeah.
I guess.
Or there's a chance I could get kicked in the nuts and that'd be terrible.
I guess so.
bad.
But just that tech, like when he's in the van, it was basically the robot Labo suit.
Yeah.
Where he's got all those strings and cords. Or like, I don't understand how any of this nonsense
amazing.
is working.
It was great.
How are they floating around doing the dancing? What did that look like in the real world?
You are officially crossing the threshold into thinking about it too much.
That's what dorks do. This movie's made for dorks. You have to have it make like a little bit of sense.
All I hear is this is the greatest film of all time.
I've actually grown on it even like since watching, when I said I liked it. I actually like it more now that I've had time to digest it.
Yeah.
Me too.
Is it just a rebuttal against Leo? Because
No.
I'm actually surprised that Leo hates fun, to be honest with you.
And Leo's perspective is really interesting to me because I think you actually probably know a lot more of these references than you're fessing up to, right?
Yeah, I got a lot of them.
you got a lot of it. But that said, I don't think a lot of it was stuff that you have a special nostalgia for, right?
Sure.
Oh, Leo.
That's fair to say.
Hey,
well, he
Leo.
has too much nostalgia for The Shining, apparently.
Leo, the big ape you saw, that's King Kong.
But the T-Rex wasn't the Jurassic Park T-Rex because it
Actually, it
roared
was.
differently.
Did you know that the
was.
DeLorean is
not.
from Back to the Future?
What is Back to the Future?
You need your Zemeckis cube to find out.
I watched some shaky iPhone footage of Spielberg introducing this movie at South by Southwest, and he says, the windshield for this movie is for the story. The side windows are for the references. That's how he framed it.
and I
It's
agree with
you can
that.
keep your eyes on the prize.
Yeah, I think that's totally fair.
Yeah.
That's what we were kind of talking about before, right? That like the pop culture stuff, there's so much of it that at some point you can look for it and you can pause the frames, and we will. But
right.
that's not what this movie's about.
The stuff in
The whole
essential-
thing just felt different. Like it had a different pace, a different
Yeah.
tone. I loved it.
You have to give it up that this movie got made. It's just
Right, which is
insane.
astonishing, and again, that was my concern. Right, I was like, you cannot adapt this book; it will never work.
The other thing we talked about how it will age. I think one of the I think it does probably suffer from age in 5-10 years. But one thing it won't suffer from is some of the digital work in the Oasis. Right?
Yeah, look great.
Is like, because it is presented as an online virtual world, it can age just fine.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Like, for instance, like Avatar, the movie Avatar. In some ways, the further away from that original movie we get, the more the CG of the character faces starts to be like, that's not so great. Like the Uncanny Valley issue stuff starts to really hit home. Whereas in this movie, that stuff won't have that same effect, because ultimately you're talking about all that stuff plays out in a virtual play space.
Yeah,
Right?
it's stylized.
It's,
right?
it's
For
all
sure.
stylized.
I thought about Avatar a lot. It's weird, and we don't know how this movie's going to do when we're recording this. Obviously,
Yeah.
it's not out yet and whatnot. I mean, I don't know how it's going to do at the box office, but it's just crazy to think of like Avatar. It's all about escapism. Tomorrowland, not that long ago, I also thought a lot about just like the weird one-to-one life.
Yeah.
It also vibes of the Matrix, like weird escapism trend in Hollywood, and maybe it'll do well.
This is a movie that more specifically is about escapism as
Right.
a concept and a theme.
Exactly.
Whereas some of those other movies you're referencing are escapist fare, right?
Okay.
Right.
But they're not necessarily about that concept.
Yeah.
This is simultaneously escapist fare because it is crazy, sci-fi races and battles and stuff like that. But it is also talking about that concept.
Yeah. Leo, any other nitpicks you want to bring up that we haven't gotten to yet? Have you been able to vent enough?
I have a list of specifically nitpicks if we want to get into it.
Oh yes, please.
Reiner, do you have to get out here? Do you want to swap
do,
for Leo?
yeah.
Okay, we can do that.
All right.
Reiner's got a place to be. Leo, come out here and get nitpicky. Let's go. Let's really dive
Thanks,
into
Reiner.
this dorky nonsense. Bye, Reiner. Okay, Leo, list of nitpicks. Because your reactions were all
I don't-
over the place.
What is going on, Leo? Are you trolling me right now?
Yeah.
Did you really? Did you
I'm
really?
the
no,
ultimate
for real.
gamer.
Like you really thought this movie sucked?
Yeah.
Go on. Go on.
But
The floor
I
is
think
yours.
there's an important qualifier, which is Leo is the funniest person, the second funniest maybe to Jeff Cork in The Office. And I feel like there's something about that comedian, cynical heart where you look at this movie differently. You look at it from a sarcastic point of view.
I won't deny it's easy to make fun of.
Okay, thank you. That's
But
what I'm
before we get
getting
into
at.
the nitpicks, my core problems were really just the story didn't progress in a way I liked and the characters I didn't find interesting.
Okay.
And the script, on the
It's
script level,
focused
I didn't
more
enjoy
on
it.
that than you'd think by the end, to the point of like, just go back to throwing crap at my face, please.
Yeah, give me some crap. So when they had this big reveal that, we've got to play Adventure, most famous Atari game by far. Why would they not pick that until 20 in when some genius in the office thinks
I
of
don't
it?
know. I don't know. I don't know how it
There's
is.
other-
I don't know if that's the most
Atari
famous
games.
Atari game. I don't know that.
They
that
talk
that's
about
true
like
at all.
Pitfall First, which is a more famous Atari
Pong.
game. Pong.
Shut up, baby
Pitfall
boy
definitely
Leo.
is.
All right, they never would have thought
Let's
of
keep
Adventure.
going.
All right, keep
They
going.
did. It was on the board. They were gonna
Yeah,
get
they
to
got
it.
there.
Eventually. Good thing Z randomly made a bet in passing with that robot butler.
Yeah.
Said,
good
I
thing.
bet you this.
Yeah.
Just throwaway line.
So in the
Look,
book,
won the whole movie.
in the book, he gets the coin a different way.
Okay, never mind
But
then.
I actually, I thought the introduction of the robot curator character, I really enjoyed him. Actually,
I thought it was kind of funny, and
was
it's
fun.
nice that I guess it had a deeper meaning ultimately. Weird that they were like recreating these scenes from his life. It was cool how it was shot, where it's like live action, but it was like rotating the camera.
Can
like
I
that.
pause for a second and
Yeah.
say that reminds me that maybe the best part of this movie for me is Halliday. I loved Halliday.
I also love
He was
Garth.
good.
I thought he was really fantastic.
Like he's so great. Like I think some of us have met some of the video game developers who that character is probably loosely based on. We won't name any names
Silicon
here.
Valley. Yeah,
There's
but-
no need to put any names out there.
But we've all met some guys who work in game development who are maybe not socially like the life of the party, right? And Halliday is so endearing here, and it's such a great way about him, especially the last scene you
Totally.
have with him,
Yeah.
where we're in his childhood room.
Yes.
We see him at the end of his life and very early on his life, and the sort of overwhelming loneliness of the character, but with this sort of like wistful humor about him.
He was
He's
much funnier
just-
than you'd expect.
He's
yeah.
just so great in every scene that we see him in. in both being fun to watch, but also like you like him even despite himself, right?
Sure.
You really like that guy.
What did he say? He had a good line too when Artemis got the key and she said like sorry about Kira, and he had a good just quick like I don't know, just like cutting her off.
He doesn't respond. He just tells her to go on.
Keep going.
Yeah,
like
basically.
he's still even in this AI manifestation of his own personality is still like he can't face it.
I didn't
right?
understand the puzzle about signing the paper at the end. It's like, you chose not to do the thing you came here to do, therefore you win. It's like, did that have a deeper meaning than I understood? I got the part about the business partner, but it's like, just because he happened to sign a contract at some point?
It's I think it's the idea of like this guy taking sole ownership over a thing.
That's a big test.
It plays into the whole anti-authoritarian
Yeah.
vibe that you've got there,
Right.
that underlying everything.
I don't know if you know, the Phil Spencer guy, he wanted money, Tack. Weren't you paying attention?
I love that he's the Phil Spencer guy to you.
I like, God, you know what? And it's really cool because I really like the, then I'm thinking about the interaction between him and IROC, which didn't exist in the book, is really key. They play off each other so well for comedic effect as the two bad guys. It's just like,
Yeah.
I really, really like their dialogue. Like,
It's fun, yeah.
Their other ham-fisted, crappy stuff on the good guy side, I guess, didn't play. But when they were being stupid, it was funny.
Yeah.
It was enjoyable. Anyway, Leo.
I'm sorry, Leo has a long list. He's got a declaration.
let's get
of
back to the things
independence
that
No,
suck.
take your time. So, you can turn your brain off or whatever, but
No one actually advocated for that, by the way.
Yeah, Leo, go ahead.
you should turn your brain off. But it was a lot of things happening very consistently that I couldn't really let them go because it was kind of the whole movie.
Yeah,
Okay.
For example, what were the rules about playing the game? Some people play on an omnidirectional treadmill. Some
I
people
don't-
jump
yes.
around their living room, and their couch is actually an object in the game.
Right.
and
I
they
like
cover behind.
the idea of some of the people being actually out on the street, where
Yeah.
they're just literally going to walk out into the street and get run over.
And they're all in the same formation.
Leo, have
if
you
they
ever-
they die like in the same group.
And
They're-
their avatars had like facial expressions perfectly for like their cheeks and their mouths, where it's like, wait, is it reading everything? Like the tech was a disaster. I wish they
think-
would have focused exactly how that crap worked a little bit more.
Leo, have you ever seen a fantasy film? Where they have dragons and wizards and stuff? Like, not necessarily stuff that you could do outside.
But
yeah,
this is based,
this is about magic.
But
a
this is-
magic game.
this is based on like tech where they're just like going for like,
It's
all right, let's
based
go for an
on-
Oculus visor.
on
that-
non-existent tech, yes.
but it looks so close to the tech we have now.
We call that
It's-
science
It's
fiction.
fine if it has consistent rules and
Yes.
it doesn't have one consistent
Put them
rule.
in some goop in their room. You know, that
Does
they just
Lord of the
float
Rings
in.
have consistent rules?
it wasn't consistent.
Right, that's it.
with the tech.
Thank
I'll
you.
give you that.
All right.
The aunt's boyfriend was the dad from The Vitch. I thought that was funny, seeing him in this role.
I reckon they're from the office, the British office, but yeah.
There you go. How was H right outside when
That was really funny. That
When
was
she got the text.
where she sends the text and instantaneously the whole team is together.
Right.
That was really funny. Yeah.
that was funny. What was there a reason why he was watching that specific video of Halliday cleaning up after the office party to give him the clue that he instantly tied to?
Because he knew that it was
first
juicy
puzzle?
in some way.
No, I think that one actually there's a reason for it because for one, it's a specific moment that he knows about, and so he's going back to that scene because he knows that's where it was discussed. I mean, the idea is that all these people treat Halliday almost like a messianic figure, right? Where they're following the words that he said in his life with a conviction and almost like a religious ferocity, right?
Because it's more clear, I think, in the book. But like, you have
Yes.
to know. That's why they have
You
the
know everything about
the team of
Halliday.
scholars to try to figure out how
Yeah.
to win this game.
But-
by knowing everything about him.
But I think in the movie they at least get across that idea that there are people, especially because of the egg hunt, there's people who have devoted their lives to figuring it out, and they think they correctly think ultimately that the key lies in understanding Halliday's life. And so when Wade wants to figure that clue out, he recalls that one moment and goes back to the archives to see
Yeah.
that moment.
I was just confused about the specific moment of all the moments in his life.
Yeah.
Is that where he mentioned Kira? I think that was where he mentioned Kira.
No,
Well,
that's the
he
second-
mentioned
that's the
Kira
first
when
one.
they're in the office together,
Oh,
right
the
before
office,
they
that's
launch
right.
the game.
Okay.
He's
Yeah,
talking
you're
about
right.
the race one.
Yeah, the race one, bringing up knowing gamers and knowing gaming and knowing that every platformer I start I try and run backwards or run to the left first. The idea that like no one had tried to go backwards on that race, that's gamer tactic number one.
Is it?
Oh yeah.
Because if you crash into the wall,
In a racing game?
it would
No,
cost all your
absolutely
coins,
in a
you'd wreck
racing
your
game.
You don't
ride,
have to
lose
go
your
so
coins.
fast. I don't know why he was going so fast.
You do, otherwise it doesn't trigger.
Well, you can just test
You got to
it.
go really fast for it. To
I feel like gamers
Oh.
would have figured that out. Gamers would have figured that out.
All right.
Okay,
Wow.
Leo.
He did say
nitpicks.
really fast. Fair point.
It's a leap
go.
of faith. Penitent man may pass. Indiana Jones kind of thing.
You got to take the leap, you guys.
Exactly.
Why weren't any of the scenes good? I have written down here.
All right, that's it.
Okay,
I'm
so
outta here.
here's the thing.
I'm sorry.
Here's where I take issue. I feel like at some point in this, you literally decided that this movie was so worthy of hating that you were gonna break out your phone and just start looking for things to like hate on. Tell me I'm wrong.
We did discuss the Shining part, but I only broke this out after the film.
Okay.
We had some
Ripped out what I
time to kill
remembered.
because they had a VR Q&A.
definitely had some time to kill.
I shouldn't
Where
have done that.
and one lady got up in the audience and asked one of the VR experts who like just works on like architectural software. She goes, "Do you think we're living in a simulation?"
A couple people laughed.
To be honest, that
Yeah.
was the best question
And
that
then
I
yeah,
asked.
a couple people laugh, and then she goes, "I'm serious." I like that doubling down. It's a good move.
Not allowed to laugh at that question.
All right, Leo, do you got any more?
It's insanely easy to escape an IOI prisoner pod. If you think to feel around for a release lever, you'll find it in 30 seconds.
What?
It's right there.
Okay, so
Well,
you're like giving your life away to.
But theoretically, they would
Yeah.
zap you because they'd see you doing
Right.
non-correct behavior in the virtual world, unless you absolutely knew what you were doing.
Yeah.
Why were people signing up for that?
Well, you weren't signing up for it. It's that they would buy up your debt,
okay,
right? Because you would build up debt both in the virtual world and the real world, right?
Sure.
And then if they wanted to, if you were like a dissident, for instance, or you were saying something they didn't like or whatever, then this big company, the equivalent, like the much more villainous version of like a Microsoft,
right.
would buy up your debt and thus put you into indentured servitude to them. And they would then put you to work in the Oasis doing their dirty work.
Okay.
So that's how you'd become one of the,
IOI. Good name, by the way, IOI.
Yeah,
Those
that's a
guys
good
are cool.
bad guy name, right?
They made Hitman.
What's that?
They made Hitman.
Yeah, fantastic.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, the best game of all time.
That's right. Fully modeled societies. Follow up. So there's escape levers when you're in the prisoner pod.
Right.
Okay.
But if you're an employee for the company,
Yes.
there's no way to get yourself out unless someone kills you, which Wade does
What do you
heroically.
mean?
He'll
They
thank
just
me
take
later.
the head-
No, no,
headsets
no.
off.
Wait,
Why did he have to kill her then?
You misinterpreted that scene completely. Oh my God! All right, so he kills her.
lay it out.
So he kills her, so she reds out. So he's only looking for people who are actively playing because she's in the game.
Right.
So when she's dead, he dismisses her.
She
because
wouldn't have
she's
taken
red.
her headset off.
Yeah, she wasn't willing to leave. And so he forced the issue by shooting her
Right.
and getting her to leave.
Yeah.
Okay.
I feel
Grow
like that
up,
one's
dude.
just
Come
like,
on.
that's-
Boo, Leo.
Very
Boo.
smart.
He's just looking for anything.
This is all stuff that occurred to me during the film and bothered me.
You can come up with more. Certainly.
yeah.
Yeah.
Part 2?
No.
Go on.
Perhaps a Ready Player 2. Let's. Leo, did you have a problem with like the core amount of nostalgia? Forget like, storytelling nitpicks here and there. Did you have a core issue with like this is too much nostalgia?
I appreciate nostalgia as an emotion that makes you feel good and it's worth pursuing
Yeah.
in this real world. And just the way that it was approached, I didn't get any of the extra subtext that Miller's gone into in this discussion.
very
Just
smart.
just from watching the film, I didn't find any kind of meaning in what they showed. It felt very reference after reference after reference.
It was just like, when Star-Lord makes a quip and references the 80s, imagine that for 2 hours.
right.
That was what I thought. I'm like, boy, people like those moments in Marvel movies. What about 2 hours
2
of
hours
those
of it,
moments?
where it's just constant. You can't keep track of them all.
Yeah.
In deference to Leo's concerns here, I definitely
These aren't concerns.
You don't have to take this little baby boy seriously.
I think some of the nitpicky stuff where you're trying to do, where you're trying to like bring real world stuff to what's ultimately a fantasy sci-fi movie, that maybe I'm not totally on board with you there, but I can totally identify and even at times feel the same way as you do, that there's times that it's just sort of stupid. Right? Like there's parts of this movie that are
Dopey, I think is a good word.
it's just
Dopey's
sort
good.
of it's just sort of like there's times it's like, well, that's just a dumb line. I mean, like that's just dumb. It's just like make a better script there, right?
That's
or
a
make
camper move.
right? Yeah, stuff like that where it's just like
But that is totally what IROC would say.
Okay, all right.
To be
all right.
fair,
Okay.
having known a good number of griefers in my day,
Yeah, inside and out.
so I don't know. I mean, I get where you're coming from there. I think I was I think maybe it's a frame of mind thing a little bit of like where you're coming into the movie with and what you're willing to like laugh off and enjoy.
Sure.
Rather than like then it just like bothers you, and it seems like a lot of it's just really bothered you.
Yeah, I mean, to reiterate, these nitpicks are just me having fun. They're not
Right.
why I dislike the movie.
You had a broader dislike of just like the structure of the movie.
Right. It was just
I get
there
that.
weren't moments that stuck out to me as like good or clever.
Leo, have you seen the Goonies by chance?
Yes.
Okay, did you like that one?
Sure.
It's fine.
I just
It's the same thing.
it's not the same thing, but like a lot of the heart I think is in both. There's very Spielberg elements.
I like
think.
how they kiss at the end. That was hot.
That was hot. It was weird to see Spielberg. Normally, like, he gets a lot of crap for being too, schmarmy, schmaltzy over kind of Americana, in American history. And it's just weird to have that same tone and that affection and I think sincerity from Spielberg shifted towards pop culture in the 80s. It's just a bizarre disconnect.
And games.
And games.
It's very important. Like the gaming element here is enormous.
There's an unabashed enthusiasm and willingness to just embrace that stuff. That once again is what works about the movie for me. I think it would have been way easy to turn this into a just like screw all that stuff. It's all just like stupid.
Right.
And they didn't do that here.
For sure.
But they also don't say that like that's the be all end all. There is something about that the movie's speaking to about that stuff gets great and it's fun. It's fun to get away and to transport yourself to another world. But there is something else, and it's like,
and it's
living
really,
life.
It's about the reality, like sitting at this podcast table with some coworkers.
Yeah,
and Best
I
Buds.
learned something.
What's better than this?
I learned something really important today. Like I thought Leo only had terrible taste in games, not just in movies as well.
Full of
A
surprises.
lesson you can take home with you. Thank you so much for everyone that watched or listened to this special edition of the Game Informer Show podcast. We appreciate you tuning in. Be sure to tune in next Thursday. We'll have a new episode waiting for you.
Whoa.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.